Welcome back to News Channel 3 Live at 9. A new practice in Memphis combines the psychological with the spiritual to provide a deep level of counseling that's being called soul care.
Soul care, I like that title there. And clinical psychologist Dr. Chuck Hannaford started Heart Life Professional Soul Care. Now, Dr. Hannaford is teaching pastors and church leaders how to address emotional problems in their congregations with his new book, Picking Up the Pieces. Doctor, welcome to Live at 9. Glad to have you here this morning.
Well, thank you for having me. It's my pleasure.
Was reading right here, the book is about transforming the way church leaders approach the care of members of their congregation and their community. Why are these things so important and why are they needed?
They're important because today we have often a fragmented approach in the church body. We recognize problems and we try to create some ministry to resolve that problem. And what we're trying to do is teach laity and the staff how to do intensive discipleship in a very structured way from a biblical format that provides continuity and consistency across all of the ministry venues. It's very important because one of my favorite sayings is everything rises and falls on leadership, but the more appropriate is everything rises on focused leadership and falls on fractured leadership. So what we're trying to do is focus the leadership to help the people who are struggling in the churches.
And what do you mean by struggling in the churches? You differentiate what you saw a void in true Christian counseling. How do you define true Christian counseling and how do you fill that void?
That is a very tough question, and I could spend the whole show just talking about that. But what we have today are Christians, people who have a personal relationship with Christ, who do counseling, and yet sometimes their counseling doesn't reflect that. We look at 20 some odd theories of personality from the secular realm, and none of those theories agree with one another about the nature of man and his problems. Some are man is tabula rasa, blank slate. Some is that man is born good and society and culture corrupts him. We operate from a biblical anthropology which basically says that man is born into sin, which is this corrupting principle, and the cure for that is Christ. And the Bible is full in Christian traditions of how the great reformers, Martin Luther, John Calvin, those people developed the concept of sola scriptura, which means that the Bible is the lens through which all truth must be viewed. And so we view dealing with people's problems, emotional problems, depression, anxiety, relational problems, marriage, through the lens of Scripture, and use principles that are biblical in order to build and restructure those relationships.
So with that in mind, is that one way church leaders as well as members of the congregation that we can all literally and figuratively try to pick up the pieces?
Yes. One of the things about the book that we're trying to do is I've been consulting with churches for about 20 years. And what we try to do is develop what we call topic-specific groups. A lot of churches are doing that now so that they have divorce care, grief and loss when you lose someone in your family, other topic-specific groups that reach into the congregation for those people having problems, but also reach out into the community in a way to bring people into the church. The problem with these topic-specific groups is that you have a variety of materials, some of which are not doctrinally and theologically consistent with that particular local church body. So what we're trying to do is major on developing that consistency because, for instance, if someone is going through a divorce, chances are if they go through that 8-week group, they may find that they're struggling with depression or anxiety, so they may need to go into a group for that. So we want continuity among the groups. And that's what the book is about in terms of teaching churches how to develop that to protect themselves from liability, because there's an increase in litigation against churches now for doing counseling kinds of things.
I didn't know that.
Really?
Increase in litigation.
Yeah.
Really?
Churches with 1,000 members or more present on Sunday morning have a 10% greater lawsuits filed against them.
So is there a fear maybe or concern for some churches just to say, I don't even know if we're going to handle this or even work on these issues anymore?
Yes, but it doesn't have to be, because the mission and the normal and customary function of a church is to provide ministry. Where churches get into trouble is when they hire someone who's licensed by a state to come in as an employee. Then that opens the church up to the state being able to pierce that corporate veil of the church. But if a church does ministry, does topic-specific groups and ministry groups and pastoral counseling, then they're within their rights, both as a corporation and constitutionally, to do what they're called to do. So we're trying to teach churches to do ministry, not professional work.
And should we also look at this as also more than just a book, but also kind of a guidebook or a handbook?
Well, that's a good point. This is a practical step-by-step approach. A church can take this book, and I have forms for to protect the church from liability. There are 15 forms in the book which can be copied and used, and yes, it is a step-by-step approach.
And you work with all denominations?
Yes,
Amazing.
yes. Yes.
I bet it is. Clinical psychologist Dr. Chuck Hannaford.
All right, and the information on your screen about where you can get in touch with Chuck. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
You're very welcome.
We appreciate it.
Appreciate it. I appreciate it.
Yeah,
Thank you very
good.
much.
Up next.